Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
Welcome to the Financial Independence Coach, naturally creating freedom, meaning, and wealth. Brought to you by Yefel Pty Ltd in association with Brandlive.co.za. And here is your host and coach, Yvonne E. Ventilo.
Good morning, Brand Life streamers and Yefel Pty Ltd subscribers. Yes, it's that time on a Monday morning. Time for the Financial Independence Coach. Brought to you by Brands Life and Yefel Pty. Recorded live here at 27 Boxes in Melville. Well, this morning we are talking small business. The impact of HR and IR on a small business. And in the studio today, I have Ferdi from Hardcorp Solutions. Good morning, Ferdi.
Good morning, Yvonne, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you this morning.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And the things that we are going to talk about is things that are actually close to the heart of small businesses. I mean, just taking for the fact that even a one-man band has sometimes a few helpers within the business, but a lot of times these business owners don't understand the implications of what HR and IR could be on them. But before we get that, Ferdi, tell us who you are and where you're from.
My name is Ferdi Hartzenberg. I'm the managing member of a business called Hardcorp Human Capital Solutions. And our main aim is to provide solution. We are a solution-driven business to focus specifically on the challenges that SME enterprises may have in terms of human resources as well as in terms of industrial relations.
Okay. And Ferdi, now, when we go and look at an SME, now I know in quite a few cases that has come across my path in the last couple of years, the SMEs don't put so much value, so much weight in actual proper HR solutions within their company because they really don't have the time. They don't understand it. They don't have the time to implement them themselves. What are the implications on a SME if they don't pay attention to this?
Yvonne, it's imperative that SMEs have the foundations in place in terms of employment contracts and sound human resources practices, as well as industrial relation practices when they are dealing with staff. And unfortunately, when staff are disciplined and ultimately terminated and the wrong processes are followed, the CCMA don't take kind on that, and they are deemed on the same principles and practices as what a medium and even larger companies would be regarded on.
Yeah, and we spoke about a case that you told me that you had earlier this year where a startup, these lack of procedures and systems and policies, it actually cost them quite a bit of money.
Correct, Yvonne. You sit with a situation where in the event that correct procedures are followed, your chances of defending any matter is so much better. But when the incorrect procedures or no procedures rather are not adhered to, you get to a hijacking situation at conciliation level at CCMA where you have no alternative but to settle. And in most cases, that settlement is more prescribed by the referring party, being the applicant, than you being the respondent. And in this particular case that you're referring to, it costed my client 60,000 Rand. And that was for a startup business. And it was so sad that someone with the greatest of intentions had to fork out so much money that they in fact did not really have, just to settle a matter for trying to terminate someone but not following any procedures.
And now, when should an SME start paying attention to HR?
the moment that you engage or you intend to recruit staff for your business, that is the time that you should start implementing your HR processes. And by that I mean your employment contracts, your HR policies, albeit leave procedures, disciplinary code, that are points that are essential in managing the HR component of your business.
Mm-hmm. Now, in a scenario, and we're going to talk quite a few scenarios here today so that we can make it more understandable for the layman out there, is in a scenario where somebody, for instance, has accepted employment, but it's more like a gentleman's agreement. There's no written document for it. And it comes to a point where the employer does not pay the so-called employee that has accepted this gentleman's agreement. What procedure can be taken in that scenario? I mean, from the employee's side, obviously he's accepted the job, the job. He's accepted, or expectation was created to earn a certain level of income, but it was never provided for him on paper. What does that employee then do?
That makes it so difficult in the absence of a contract. A contract would normally be accompanied by a detailed job description. Now, the trend these days are job descriptions are more wider than it was in the past, where it was specifically defined. But having said that, if that process is in place in terms of a contract and job description, at least the staff member could be held accountable for what the expectations are in terms of his position that he's employed for. So again, it's vital to have those things in place, and then one can move and say, but you were employed as X, Y, and Z. We expect, in terms of that, for you to have the inherent requirements, the key performance areas, and performance to comply, or to in terms of what you are employed for to do. If someone is not performing in terms of the anticipated performance, then obviously one can start with a malperformance procedure, or if it's in a case of misconduct, one could start implementing remedial discipline by means of warnings. Should it be a bit more of a more serious nature, or where the remedial discipline route has been exhausted, to start looking at implementing a disciplinary hearing with the anticipation that person's employment will be terminated.
Okay, and that's now from the employer's side if the employee has done something wrong.
Correct.
Now, from the employee's side, he's done nothing wrong. He's delivered what he was supposed to deliver, but yet the employer is not paying him.
In such instance, the employee would have the right to approach the Department of Labour in order to enforce that contract, or alternatively, he or she could also seek relief from the CCMA.
Mm-hmm.
But in first instance, I would recommend that person knock on the door of the Department of Labour.
Even if there is no written contract between
Yes.
the two parties.
Yes.
Now, for an SME, and I'm looking specifically at your one-man bands that have a couple of helpers within his business. Now, most entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs don't know the full extent of the Labour Act, or what is required within a contract, for instance, or what are all the requirements of HR. Where does a SME start? Where does the entrepreneur start?
Yvonne, when one starts a business, obviously one is a fundi on the field, albeit what that field may be. So starting the business, one is not always au fait with economics, or perhaps specifically in this instance, human resources and industrial relations. So it makes sense to outsource that function to a business like Hardcore Consulting, where we could offer those expertise and keep our clients up to date in terms of what the trends are on the market, as well as what the new anticipated legislation would be.
Mm-hmm. You see, because that's also another thing. When you're speaking to SMEs and you refer to the human resources department that's non-existent, they often tell you, yeah, but to employ a human resource specialist is extremely expensive. And very few actually know that these resources can be outsourced at a reasonable rate.
True.
Now, in scenarios where companies now have, for instance, let's call it a one-pager agreement, for lack of a better word, between themselves and employees, and something does go wrong from there. Now, let's take it first from the employer's point of view. Now, they've only got this one-pager. How do they proceed from there to, number one, fix it, and number two, prevent it from happening in the future?
If there's a performance issue or misconduct issue, then obviously the employer would start giving that person warnings if there's non-performance in terms of that contractual agreement between the parties. And if that remedial discipline does not have the corrective behavior rather, then obviously one would anticipate further action.
Mm-hmm. And in such a scenario, now, just talking a bit from what I know from the Labour Act, the SME should also show some responsibility towards providing the employee with sufficient education to help them to correct it. Or am I incorrect?
When one appoint a staff member in a certain capacity, the expectation is that that person would already have the knowledge and skills required to fulfill that obligation. There's obviously an anticipation that there would be further training. But as I've said, one would imagine that if I appoint a staff member that that person already have the desired knowledge and know-how, to put it practically, to do what I have recruited that staff member to do. The problem comes in where that person is not fulfilling that obligation, and then the employer do not know how to deal with it. And that's where we come in to say, but we will hold you, Mr. SME's hand or Mrs. SME's hand, and assist you and going through all these loopholes, and for you to come out successfully and to resolve this crisis or this issue that you may have. Either be it by attempting to correct the person's behavior, or if there is no improvement, then obviously to terminate that staff member's employment with the SME.
Yeah, it's all interesting. But we'll continue this discussion after the break. See you on the flip side.
Have you ever thought about the power of social media? Social media has the power to make your business grow. Grow! Yeah. Why don't you let us manage your social media? Because our business is to see your business grow. Visit us at www.bstownmedia.co.za.
Making a bold statement yet blending into the surrounding suburbs of Melville, 27 Boxes is a realization of edgy design and practical implementation. A radical departure from the shopping malls of our generation, yet not a return to the high streets of our youth. 27 Boxes showcases the best of a shopping centre set in a garden, surrounded by the bohemian suburb that is Melville. 27 Boxes, shop, play, eat. Harnessing the power of talk radio. brandlive.co.za.
And we're back. You're listening to the Financial Independence Coach, recorded here live at 27 Boxes, brought to you in association by brandlive.co.za and Jeffel Pty Ltd. In studio today we have Ferdi, and we are talking HR and IR. Now, before the break, we spoke about a couple of scenarios with regards to HR. I've got one more scenario that I want to run past you, Fagdy. There's in a scenario where there's a company that's been established and they've been running for quite a few years. Okay. And the employees are at the point of being disgruntled because the employer keeps on changing what their hours are, what their job descriptions are, what is expected from them, and not providing them with the in the employee's eyes, required remuneration for it. Now, in those scenarios where the employee can prove that the more medium-sized enterprise has not kept up their HR, how can that employee take action without victimizing themselves within the company?
What I would suggest in such an instance is to file a grievance where there's a fairly system in place, is to look at such an option. Alternatively, which I always propagate, is for the employee to go and discuss that with his manager or superior, and should there not be a desired outcome, then to refer the matter to the CCMA or relevant bargaining council. But normally the best way of correcting that situation would be to go and speak to your manager and to try and exhaust the path in terms of communication with in terms of the hierarchy within the business, instead of just jumping ship and going directly to the CCMA.
Yeah, and in this specific scenario, there is just the employees and the big boss. So there is no hierarchy to actually follow. And I know for a fact on several attempts they have tried to speak to the big boss to get this rectified, to have proper job descriptions put in place, to have proper leave policies put in place. But she still hasn't adhered to this. In that scenario, are they then, let's say, permitted, in quotations, to move then over to file agreements with the CCMA?
Yes, in such an instance, they would file a ULP, unfair labour practice, with the CCMA. But I would just imagine that those staff members or member would advise the big boss, so to speak, of the intention to try and remedy or get a third party, neutral party, albeit the CCMA, involved to try and remedy the situation. In such instance, the big boss may yield from such eminent step, and to say, okay, let's sit down and try and resolve this.
No, and then she'll actually take them serious for what they are saying.
Yes.
Now, that's all HR. Now, explain to us exactly what is IR.
Industrial relations is a field. In terms of the Labour Relations Act that regulates the labour fraternity in this country, when an employer intends to take action against staff members, the LRA prescribes certain procedures when doing so. And that deals specifically, if I can use the example of a disciplinary inquiry, and should that disciplinary inquiry result in a dismissal, what the steps are, and if the matter is then referred to the CCMA or relevant bargaining council, how that procedure should be conducted. Now, we've got more than 20 years of experience in representing members at the CCMA and bargaining councils, and we've got a very good reputation and a good amount of success in terms of representing these members at those forums.
Mm-hmm. Now, Fagdy, now you say you guys have got more than 20 years experience in this field. Examples of the most strangest cases that's ever come across your path?
strange and messy. I recently had to deal with a matter between siblings, between two brothers, and it becomes really messy. Obviously, it's one try and see the clinical side of it, and obviously rely on fact in order to defend it, because ultimately the matter will be determined on facts and not on subjectiveness.
And not on the emotions of the two brothers that want to pull each other's hairs out.
Correct.
Now, in a lot of scenarios that of cases that come across your desk, it's basically of the employer or the SME did not know or did not put the correct stuff in place. And then you also have the quite same amount of the employer has got the right stuff in place, but it still ends up in front of the CCMA. How do you, as a person, keep a level head with all of this?
This is obviously a professional capacity. So obviously one remove one's emotions from your personal capacity. And that is what my clients also expect from me, to remain level-headed and to remain as professional at all times as possible.
But I suppose, sometimes you do see the other side of the coin.
Yes.
Of the humanity factor and the emotional factor involved with this.
It is at times saddening if you see that your client has not followed the correct procedure, and as I've used the previous example, where there would have to be a settlement due to a lack of merits in terms of the case, and there is there's no sense in defending that matter any further, and you have to convey that to your client, and that entails your client having to settle for a vast amount.
And then obviously, it's costing him now a lot of money out of his pocket now, whereas he did have the correct procedures, policies, contracts in place beforehand, it would have cost him a lot less in the long run.
He could have saved a lot of money.
Now, if anybody is interested in outsourcing their HR services to you and your company, how do they go about contacting you?
They're welcome to phone me directly on my number. It's 082 771 4655, or alternatively look us up on our webpage. It's www.hartcorp.co.za, or make contact with me via email on Ferdi, FERDI, at Hartcorp, HARTCORP.co.za.
Okay, and you guys also have a Facebook page where
Yes.
they can go and look at
Yes, we do.
what you guys offer and so forth. Now, Ferdi, just one last question before we go. In all your years' experience in HR and IR, if there is one lesson that you could say put in a box and hand that out for free to SMEs or wannabe entrepreneurs or anybody who wants to start a business, what would that one lesson in a box be?
I would say twofold. One, get your systems in place, albeit basic procedures, and be fair towards your staff.
Be fair.
Correct.
Always keep fairness in mind. Now, Ferdi, it's been absolutely lovely having you here. And I will be placing all Ferdi's details on the YouTube channel and the website where the vlog is going to be posted very shortly. Good news, the website is in the process of rebranding and we're busy getting all of it up. So you'll be able to read all of that. Brands Live will have the podcast also within the next 24 hours where you can then go and listen again how to get hold of Ferdi. Now, SMEs, this is my message to you. Entrepreneurs, wannabe entrepreneurs, wannabe business owners. Put the right foundation in place. In the long run, yes, it might look like a hassle now. It might look like an additional expense which you have not budgeted for. But in the long run, this is you investing in yourself, in your company, and in your employees, your future employees. If you don't have this stuff in place, there is some horror stories out there where people had to close their businesses due to the lack of procedures and policies and the right contracts. So please listen to this message again, listen to Fagdy's contact details again, and get somebody in if you don't have somebody yourself to put these procedures and policies in place. Or just give an HR consultant a call and ask them about it. But this is it for me for this week. Here from 27 Boxes, recorded live in Melville, brought to you by brandslive.co.za in association with Yeffel Pty Ltd. You have been listening to the Financial Independence Coach. This is me, Yvonne, saying Shalom.
brandlive.co.za. Harnessing the power of talk radio. brandlive.co.za. Live from 27 Boxes in the heart of Melville, this is brandlive.co.za.